TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It is my great pleasure to spend a little time walking down memory lane with two of my favorite people in the world, Rick May and Ron Hall. And guys, how many years ago was it we did the morning show at WACO?
Oh,
Anybody remember
I'm
how
going to defer to Rick.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time. I don't even remember. It was a long time ago.
Well, I did TV for 25 years, and that was prior to that.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, and then I've been retired now for 2 years, so make that 27. So it had to have been 30, 40 years ago. But I've known you guys longer. I met you, Ron, when I was 15 years old, so that was a ways back.
Is that when you were a receptionist?
I answered the telephone at KWTX. It was my first job as a teenager.
Yes.
Frank Fallon hired me to answer the phone in the evening after school.
Yeah.
And that you were the dashing local news anchor for Channel 10.
Well, I came in 1964 to Waco. And when I was being interviewed, I wasn't real sure I wanted the job, frankly.
Really?
I came from Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. But at the time, and I won't go into all this, but I was out of a job. And it happens in the broadcasting industry, you know.
Yeah,
so
it does.
I had come down to visit my old friend. You may remember him, Carl Riley. You remember Carl? He was a DJ and did some news. We did a lot of the.
I knew some Carls, but I don't remember a Carl Riley.
Carl Riley. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he used to work at in Fort Worth at KXOL radio, and he had moved down here for some reason. I was down just driving around. And in my 59 Mercury convertible at the time, and on the way to New Orleans. And so I stopped, visited with Carl, and he said, hey, there's a news anchor, a news job available, and you might want to talk to the news director. I said, me work in Waco, Texas? You got to be kidding.
That's from the Dallas market, maybe. Step down. Yeah,
right. Well, I never worked in the Dallas market, just in Fort Worth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is similar.
Yeah, the Metroplex.
30 mile, the Metroplex, yes. But anyway, Carl is no longer with us, and but I interviewed.
So who was the news director at Channel 10? Do you remember?
Ben Vaughn.
Okay.
You remember Ben?
I think I know that name, yeah.
I officiated at his funeral.
Oh.
And it was a sad thing. Grace Vaughn, do you remember her? Mm. She was the news secretary. Ben, the news director, married her, and they quit, moved to Dallas, and he did some documentaries, I guess, and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Did quite well.
I'm sure that was before I started working there in the 70s.
One of the things, let me tell this quick story, Rick. And but one of the reasons that I decided I did want to go to work at KWTX was when I was there during the day, this big hulk of a figure walked into the front door and almost had, I wasn't working there at the time, almost had to turn sideways to get in, and it was Clint Walker.
Oh my goodness. The actor.
The actor.
Yeah.
And he was huge. He was here to do the fair.
Okay.
Be one of the stars or the star.
So it was in October.
And I said, well, I can get to meet a lot of famous people here.
There you go.
So I changed my mind, and the rest is history.
Of course, the studios were there right across the street from the Heart of Texas
That's
Fairground.
right,
Now
yeah.
it's Oak Crest Funeral Home, which I always thought there might be something in this.
Right.
But no, it's been a funeral home now for many, many years after Channel 10 built their new place out on Loop 340.
Long as you mention that, I plan to leave through Oak Crest Funeral Home. The building brought me to Waco, the same building I will be leaving. If that's of news.
Long time. Let's wait a long time. Rick, so tell me about you. Now, you are a Texan as well, yes?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was born in Kansas, Junction City, Kansas, but then adopted and brought to a small town outside of Lubbock, and I got started at radio in Lubbock and came to Waco in 1978. And that's where I met, the first person I ever met in Waco was Jim Miller.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Miller.
and we became lifelong friends, like Ron and I, you and I.
Yeah.
Jim was a special friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jim is the reason that I left KWTX to go to WACO in radio to begin a news career. He hired me I was a Baylor student, but I was wanting to learn about news and news reporting, and he gave me that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love Jim Miller. And of course, actually working in radio on the air there at WACO, so much fun. I mean, it was just fun, wasn't it? We just laughed and carried on. Now, you came to radio later. You had a very long television career.
Well, we did both in the early days.
Yeah, well, that's true. KWTX had
AM and FM,
and
TV.
And TV, right.
Yeah, we did all three of them. And matter of fact, many times I would get off the air in television and walk just a few feet and do a radio newscast.
Yep.
So,
well,
I liked that, actually. It was fun to go from one to the other and not work in just one TV or radio.
My first on-the-air job was there at KWTX. The TX FM, the FM station signed on the air, and about a year into that, it was beautiful music, the golden sound.
Oh, yeah.
And I was put on the air as one of the very, very inexpensive part-time help that they hired to sort of man the board. We would play Montavani, Percy Faith.
Yes.
We were allowed to play 2 vocals an hour, 1.5 hour. We did time and temperature, and then headlines on the half hour. So I was beginning to, learn how to read on the air, to be on the air, and those are really special special days.
Getting the job at WACO for me, most people, when they're looking for a job from another area, you send out a tape of your show, and the program director or general managers can listen and see if they want to hire you or not. That didn't happen in my case. I had one, and I gave it to, at that time, the general manager was Robert Weathers.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I tell you what, why don't you just go back there and get on air and show me what you can do.
That's right.
That's
Trial
Robert.
by fire.
Trial by fire. Well, so I went back there, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, of course, WACO, the studios were there on Loop 340, and still, it's a conglomeration of a bunch of different radio stations now, but it was originally supposed to be Channel 25.
Yeah. It had the name on the front.
And the name was on the front of the building, and of course that did not end up happening.
Didn't happen.
So I was kind of working at 25 even years and years before I actually went to work at the TV station.
Yeah.
But it when you look back on those radio days, for me, it's the people. It's the Jim Millers and, Zach and Jim, even, in the more recent years, as in like 25 years ago. But we're talking way further back. Robert Weathers, of course, was an interesting character. And you mentioned funeral. I sang at his funeral, and then just not too long ago at his widow's funeral, sang at Helen's funeral.
Yes, she died recently, didn't she?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you look back and think, I wish I could have at all in your career?
Wish I could have what?
Done something there. You know what? Do you have any?
Oh, wait till you get my age, Ann, and you you will say that so many times. I have so many regrets of things I didn't do, and some of the things I did do. You have to regret.
Yeah.
I opened my mouth when I should have kept it closed.
Well, we were talking about how, podcasting is a whole new animal.
Yes.
And very freewheeling. It's very freeing. And, the rules that we used to live by on broadcast, radio and television don't necessarily apply. Of course, for me personally, no profanity, things like that. That's just part of who I am.
You mean some podcasts, they don't restrict profanity?
Oh, no. Apparently not.
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's not part of my genre, I guess. No.
I mean, there were words you could say that you would be fired immediately off the air. We talked, you mentioned Clint Walker,
right?
Really big time.
I'm
folks.
trying to think of what his name was on the air.
Cheyenne, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Cheyenne Bodie.
Yes,
Cheyenne. But so who are some of the special folks that you've had the opportunity to interview?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I've been trying to think of some. My favorite was John Wayne.
Really?
Of course. Yeah, I got to meet John.
Did you
Actually,
really?
They brought a lot of news people to Arlington, Texas, to a motel. We got to stay there a couple of nights, actually, and got to interview John. And such a delightful, friendly, helpful person.
Is he huge? Is he big? Sometimes celebrities and movie stars, they're kind of little in real life,
He was big.
Okay,
and he was tall.
He was a big guy.
And since you brought it up, I will mention one of the things I noticed about him. I don't know. Should I tell this? Yeah.
Go ahead. What the heck? It's a podcast.
He had boots on, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But he had the smallest feet.
Really?
I've always been agog at John Wayne's feet.
Tiny feet.
But other than that, he was a giant of a man.
Sure.
And one of the questions I remember I asked him in the interview was, did you ever get hurt during all these rollicking fights?
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, he said, well, it really wasn't that rugged.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure he had stand-ins and stunt guys.
That's right. He did mention that.
Yeah.
He had stand-ins. And
they got to protect him, make sure he
Oh,
didn't get
absolutely. He said, I did get hit a couple of times, but it wasn't serious.
Well, Rick, what about you? I mean, I know in country radio you worked.
One of the ones that I remember, two of them, one was Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger,
really?
Yes.
Yeah, he was
Really?
in town, I think, for the rodeo.
Yeah.
And
think
I
I
got to
remember
interview
that.
him, and he was very nice, and he kind of put me on the spot. I was, trying to go through, how did the Lone Ranger become the Lone Ranger? And he said, well, you tell me. And so
That's pretty good.
I did have it pretty close to right.
Yeah,
though. And
yeah.
But that was a lot of fun. And then the other one was Wolfman Jack. He came through Waco, and he stopped into the radio station, and he got on the air with me, and I did an interview with him. In fact, we were playing country music back then, and Tammy Wynette had just come out with a new record that mentioned Wolfman Jack in it, and he had not heard it.
He hadn't heard it.
He had not heard that record.
Yeah.
It was called "I'd Like to See Jesus on the Midnight Special," and then the next line was, "I want to see the Wolfman bring him on." And so that was
he got a good reaction, I guess.
Yeah, he loved it. He loved it. That was really special because I went to school out in Los Angeles, and I would listen to Wolfman Jack 6 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
Loved hearing his show. Mm-hmm. So it was a special thing for me to get to interview him all those years later.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, you're thinking about the studios there at WACO. My first time to walk in the door, I was a Smile Girl. Dub King had the Heart of Texas Smile Girls, and I was a junior in high school. This was before I think I started working as a receptionist. No, I was working as a receptionist at KWTX at the time, but I thought, well, I'm going to audition for this, try out to be a Smile Girl. And I was selected. And so they took us to WACO for an interview, and Wayne Claiborne was the newsman there. And he asked me, little girl, what would you like to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to have a show like Marvel Russell's. And Marvel Russell on KWTX had an afternoon like cooking and interview type show. And about 50 years later, I started Central Texas Living at KXXV, and I thought my dream finally came true. We did a little cooking, sort of, kind of, but yeah, it ended up being the kind of show that she had interviews and talking to folks. And so it's been since not doing that anymore to have this podcast so we can reminisce and talk about fun things.
When did you know that you wanted to be on the radio or on television?
Well, that's a good question. There weren't a lot of women in broadcasting. I mean, Barbara Walters, on the Today Show, and that was locally. I didn't even know of other than Marvel Russell doing a TV show that to emulate. So it was really Frank Fallon taking a leap of faith to put me on the air, because there really weren't even high school girls that were doing radio work. So, and I was so nervous. Oh, and the other thing that he had me do, the first person I ever interviewed, and I told Andrew Gomez on his podcast, we were talking about this very thing, and I said the very first interview I ever did was with Art Linkletter.
Oh, wow.
Frank sent me to Baylor University because Mr. Linkletter was at Baylor to make an appearance with a cassette recorder. Remember the cassette you put and I interviewed him, and of course Frank was coaching me how to do an interview, and I was scared out of my mind, and I was Mr. Linkletter. and of course he had a national TV show, I think on CBS, and Kids Say the Darndest Things, the book he read. So he was wonderful with the child. And it was, I have no idea what ever happened to that little cassette interview I did with her. It would be kind of funny to listen to now. And I'm sure he never put it on the air, but anyway.
I was just going to say, that reminded me of another celebrity that I interviewed, Paul Harvey.
Oh, yeah.
He came to Waco.
Wow.
And
he was my hero, for sure.
Interview him, and one of my questions was, how come you're not on TV, Paul? He said, well, when TV was coming in, my hair was going out.
It is a visual medium. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and visit a little bit more. I want to hear more about Rick's long career with the Baylor Lady Bears.
Oh, yes,
so we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. And we're back with Rick May and Ron Hall, two of my former colleagues at WACO AM. Of course, our precious Frank Fallon and Jim Miller that rounded out that morning crew, and they've gone on to their heavenly reward. But Frank, of course, he was my daddy in the broadcast business, and he was the voice of the Baylor Bears.
Yeah.
But Rick, you were the voice of the Lady Bears for a long time.
Yeah, 22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
You and the wonderful Lori Fogelman. Lori Scott was her
Lori
air
Scott
name.
was on the radio.
Yeah, and of course, she also worked at
Television.
Channel 10 and is still doing wonderful work at Baylor as their media.
Yes.
As their media person. And I'm sure she's got a fancier title than that. But as a reporter, I call Lori. If I need to talk to somebody at Baylor, you kind of go through Lori's office. I know she was a delight to work next to.
Oh,
for all
yeah,
those years.
absolutely. I called her my radio wife.
I know.
And,
I had TV husband too. Yeah.
So we worked together for so long. It was just we could play off of each other, and it just seemed natural. And if she wasn't going to be there, I didn't want to be there. And in 2018, we had decided that would be the final year that we would do that.
Really?
Yeah.
And so
Well, the traveling is,
yeah,
it's not easy.
no, it's not. And
I mean, it's kind of telescoped into a certain part of the year.
right,
But
for about 6 months,
it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
a lot of travel, and I loved every minute of it.
Sure.
But the travel kind of got a little old after a while, and it kind of got harder to do.
Yeah.
as you know, Ron.
Yeah.
So we bowed out in 2018, and 1 year later they win a national championship again,
Oh,
Yeah.
which we weren't a part of. But it was a great ride, and I loved it.
Well, of course, the first one was in 2005.
Yes.
Right. So what was that like? I mean, I remember being on the air on the TV station and, with all the celebration and all that. But for you guys to have lived through the whole season and the players, and you get to know them so well.
Yeah. I mean, they become like your daughters.
Sure.
And travel with them, eat with them. You just it's like being in a family, and it is a family. But in 2005, we started off the NCAA tournament in Seattle, and I knew we were pretty good.
Yeah.
And another television anchor was there doing the TV portion of that broadcast, and she said that she thought that Baylor could probably win it all. And I opened my eyes and I said, well, maybe we really can.
Yeah, sometimes you're a little too close to the
and I had seen, we weren't a number one seed then.
Right.
But we beat 3 number one seeds on the way to the national championship.
Right.
And got a little revenge on LSU, who had beat us the very first game of the season down in Austin in a tip-off tournament for the start of the year. And we got a little revenge on them, and then beat Michigan State for the national championship, and it was just surreal. Big stadium in Indianapolis, and 36,000 people there. It was just a really, really good time, and to come away with the national championship was really special.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Geetson was there.
Yeah.
Reporting, and we did a live shot. I was back at the station, and of course, then he filled in your spot then for a couple of years after you guys retired.
Yeah, Bruce, great guy.
Yeah. I can't say enough about how much I adored him as my co-anchor for 13 years. We worked side by side, and it is when you have a partnership like that where you just know what they're going to do, and we never completed each other's sentences. That was, we told producers never ever write copy where I'm finishing his sentence, but you do kind of get into a rhythm, and you know what, and particularly when it's breaking news and major stories like the West explosion and the Nadal Hassan shooting, when you're on the air literally for hours and hours and hours, and there's not necessarily a lot of new content. I mean, it's so important to have somebody you can just look at like, I got nothing else to say. Yeah. And he was, of course, he's a longtime sports guy.
Yes.
Yeah,
he did sports down in the Houston area.
Right.
And
covered the Houston Rockets. Of course, he was with the Houston Rockets when they won a national championship. So he has the big honking rings from those NBA years. You got a pretty ring or two, right?
I actually got 3. I got got one, even though I wasn't doing the broadcast that year. But Bruce got one, and I
Yeah.
told him whenever he took over, I said, I sure hope that you get to call a national championship and see what it's about. And sure enough, he got to. So that was fabulous.
Yeah. Well, sports is such a great training ground for folks. But I always, when I hear you, play-by-play guys, and of course, color is what Lori was, adding that, thing that sort of fills things out. But you guys have to describe what you're seeing. And some of those names are crazy. I mean, how much practicing did you have to do for the?
I'll tell you a good Frank Fallon story. And this, I started off before I was doing the Lady Bears radio. I was doing the PA at the Farrell Center.
Yes,
for
I
men's
think
and
I
women's
remember
basketball.
that. Yeah.
I did baseball and then also the football.
I remember
stadium.
that. Yeah.
And so we were playing. I think it was the men that were playing the Lithuanian national team, and the names were really something. And I asked Frank, I said, how do you pronounce this name or these names? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, what do I do? He said, well, when in doubt, mumble.
Mumble. Did you do a lot of mumble?
I did a lot of mumble. Yeah.
Oh man, but what a prince of a guy. I mean, Frank Fallon, as he was my daddy in the broadcasting business, and he taught me so much about how to conduct myself professionally on the air, how to interview. He said, and it's not about you. When you're interviewing someone. Of course, I've kind of talked a lot about me this go around, probably more than I should have. But this is a fun look back.
Yeah, and another Frank Fallon story. He did high school football games with me and Burton Lawless. And some others that sat in with us. But Frank would sit in with us because he was with the radio station, and he would go along, and I said, hey, this is Frank Fallon. You do the play-by-play. And he said, oh, no, Rick, you do it. I'll just be the color. And
really?
I was just, wow. And I always appreciated that because that, kind of gave me my chops learning to do that.
Yeah.
And he would, give me some advice here and there. And it was just so special to have that. And then years later, I received the Frank Fallon Award. And that meant a lot to me.
Huge.
To get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because of who he was.
Well, yeah, absolutely. My first live broadcast, again, I had just gone to work at KLWTX answering the phone.
Yeah.
He had me be his color person for a radio broadcast of the Baylor Homecoming Parade. Mm-hmm. And we climbed up on top of a building, which I'm afraid of heights, climbed up on top of a building, and Baylor would send, it's a huge, long parade. It's the longest collegiate parade in the world and so forth. And huge stack of all the different, entries. And we're on like a library bookbinding building down on Washington, I think we were on. Anyway, it was right close to where it started, early in the morning, cold. And I've got this huge notebook full of... I don't think I was ever right the whole time on what we were looking at. Yeah. And of course, he was so gracious, though. And so it kind of, the Art Link letter
he's
for me. He was gracious with me. But I was scared out of my mind.
Yeah. We had a radio show. I think you had already gone to television. Maybe not. But it was the Rick, Ron, and Frank show. Rick, Ron, and Frank.
Well, that's when I did news.
Yeah, okay.
And there was kind of Rick, Ron, Frank, and Ann.
Yeah.
And Ann, yeah.
That's right. We even did a little TV promo. Remember, we did a.
Yes.
Oh, whatever happened to that? I would love to find that TV promo.
I've got them somewhere.
Yeah.
We did several of those, and it was so much fun. I think that was the most fun show that I have ever been a part of in my whole radio career. That we just had so much fun, and I look forward to getting up every day. And Ron and I would sing "Happy Trails" to close out the show.
That's right. We'd sing "Happy Trails." Well, it was during that time we were all working together that the Branch Davidian thing happened. And that end of that first week, remember we just did a call-in show where folks would call in, and some of the things early in of course, the raid happened on a Sunday. This was, I think, Friday of that week, and folks were just and telling us stuff that they had seen or whatever, and predicting things that happened weeks and weeks later. As you recall, it was 51 days before the fiery end to that. That for me, I guess, as a news broadcaster, that was one of the most surreal times.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We lived through. We just couldn't wrap our heads around that whole thing. And then it just got worse with 9/11. So, we've had some major stories to report.
I wasn't in the news business when the Branch Davidian story broke, but I was a lector at St. Louis Catholic Church on the Sunday that it actually broke.
Oh, yeah.
And we were live with our church
St. Louis,
service. And Monsignor Deering was, of course, the priest at that time. And I remember that Father Deering got up and he said, "Oh, this news item just handed me from Ron Hall," in his Irish brogue.
Oh, yeah.
We have to break away from our church service and go to the Branch Davidians. So we broke out of the church service and went live.
Channel 10 went live because you were broadcast on 10, wasn't it?
I did not do the broadcast.
No,
I just
know.
informed him
that
it was going on.
But it was on, that church service was on 10.
Yes,
it was on 10.
On Channel 10 at the time. At the time.
Yeah, that was something else.
yes, it was.
It was, and then it was 51 long days of watching, news departments totally savage their budgets by sending reporters that lined that country road.
You bet.
And I was thinking about the wonderful Tommy Witherspoon, who's just left the newspaper after, I think, 40 years reporting for the WACO Trib, to go to Channel 10 to be a news writer.
Oh, really?
But that day, I was called by my AP. I was a stringer for AP, and my AP person called me that Sunday. I'd just gotten home from church. He said, "And we need to go cover something." I said, "What?" I didn't even know what had happened.
Right.
I'd been to church. He said, "Go turn on the TV." So I put it on real quick, and I just saw a little bit of a live broadcast, and there was that video of the cop on the roof, and the shooting, that video we saw a jillion times. And I said, well, I had 3 small boys. I said, "This country girl does not go where they're shooting." And he goes, "Oh, no. We just need you to go to the convention center for a press conference." I said, "That I will do."
Yeah.
So I get to the convention center that afternoon before the presser, and Tommy walks up to me, and he said, "Ann, do you have any Tylenol?" And I said, "Tommy, you look like you could use something stronger than that." He said, "I've spent 50 minutes lying in a ditch with bullets flying overhead."
Oh, my.
So, those newspaper reporters were out there. Rod Adelot, of course, was out there, a photographer for the Trib. His car was left out there, and it got smashed by a tank 51 days later. Anyway, there are some really interesting Branch Davidian stories from the standpoint of those of us reporting it. Well, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you some other questions that may just put you on the spot, or maybe not. We'll see. Stay with us. All right, and we are back with Ron Hall, Rick May. We all work together at WACO, and I did news, and you guys did the laugh and giggle part. I said it's laugh and giggle radio, but I would go after my newscast. I would come in, and we'd just chat about stuff. We would. I recall during football season, we'd predict local football games.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yes.
And sometimes I would win, and I would just, if it was Frost and Coolidge, I'd pick Frost because that was stronger than just being cool. I mean, I had no.
And I do remember you winning.
and I knew nothing about football.
Yeah. Or the team that was in blue was your favorite color.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Well, I like the colors. But we had a very serious thing happen while we were all there together working. Got a call early in the morning. One weekend, in fact, it was a Saturday, I think, and Jim Miller called me and goes, Ann, you've got to call your doctor. He said, because you've got to get on some medicine because Ron has gotten meningitis. And I went, what? So sure enough, I called my doctor. He gave me this medicine, and I dutifully took it. I know you did too, Rick. But you contracted meningitis.
Bacterial spinal meningitis.
This was in 1994.
1994. I thought, and the doctors thought, that I had the flu. And
right.
But I was at Brenda's house, as a matter of fact.
And Brenda's here in the studio with us.
And she's in the studio. And she called, actually, if I may tell the honest story.
I know the story. She called Georgia.
She called Georgia, my ex-wife, and said,
yeah.
And because we had just started dating, I suppose.
Right.
And she wanted to know if I had ever acted like this before, because I was literally out of my head.
Right.
I was barely coherent, and she wanted to know what she should do.
Right.
And of course, Georgia says, call the ambulance.
Yeah, get him to the hospital.
Because he had never done that before.
Right.
So to make a long story short, they came and took me to the Providence emergency room, and there I lay for many hours. And
because they had to test to find out exactly what you had.
They didn't know.
Yeah.
They thought I just had the flu.
Yeah.
But they finally got in touch with my primary physician at Scott and White at the time, Dr. Glenn Couchman, who's now in administration at Scott and White. And he walked in, took a look at me, and said, "This man has spinal meningitis.
Yeah.
Everybody get out of the room, isolate Ron," and they did. And I was incoherent for, was it 13 days? 11.
I came up to see you, and you were in ICU, and
yes.
I went up, and I didn't come into the room, but I just looked, and you were literally writhing in the bed. I mean,
oh, really? I don't remember that.
Well, no, you didn't know I was there, but yeah, it was a serious, thing that you survived. I mean, we were just praying for you to survive, but it did rob your hearing.
It did. They gave me a 30%, I believe it was, chance to survive. But I fooled them. I did survive. Matter of fact, Father Deering gave me last rights. Yeah. And I teased him later. I said, "No, you only gave me next to last rights." But it took the hearing totally out of this ear.
Right.
And I only have 20% hearing in this ear. Yeah. I'm wearing a hearing aid here, and with reading your lovely lips, I can communicate.
Well, and you actually went back to radio. You worked at KRZI, right?
I did. Went back to radio and continued my radio career.
That is, to me, isn't that remarkable? But we all were okay. We took the medicine, right?
Did you take the shot?
Yes.
Gamma globulin, I think, is what it was.
Is that what it was?
That sounds right.
I don't know. I just remember it stained your tears bright yellow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. It was, and we had sadly, a close friend passed away, and that next day I was at a funeral, and we were wearing white robes. We were singing, and I was trying not to, because I mean it was leaving big yellow. My tears were leaving yellow stain from that medication I had to take. But yeah, it was a scary time for you, and we were all so grateful that you came out of it, and you're doing so beautifully with the lip reading.
Well,
but I remember you saying, because it was nerve damage, that notes on a piano sounded strange. I mean, I remember you saying that.
Well, I used to could sing a little bit, but now all notes sound alike.
Oh,
and
that would be so sad.
And it's an invisible disability, actually, being deaf, which I almost am. but people don't realize how deaf I am. But I get by, and
you're doing great.
And
you do commercials now, right?
I still do a couple of commercials, and just move along as best as I can. But you never tell your age, but at 85, you get where you brag about it more than you
That's
are,
right. That's
are
an
ashamed of it. And you just keep going the best you can, even though it's a little slower.
Yeah. What about you, Rick? You doing any broadcasting, commercials, any?
No,
Really?
I'm fully 100% retired.
Yeah.
And happy.
Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, it's a good life. It's a great life. Well, it has been so much fun chatting with you guys and remembering some of those interesting times we lived. But it was just fun.
It was.
I do remember when I went to television from radio. It was so different. It was such a big learning curve. Just the vernacular and the buzzwords and the trade words and all that kind of stuff. That was a huge learning curve. But I just really, it never really was as much fun.
Yeah.
As
We
I
got
had
paid
on
for
radio.
having fun.
We did.
Yeah.
We did. I mean, I had
Not
and
much,
I
but-
had wonderful
That's true.
experiences and loved my coworkers and all that. But there's just something about radio that just gets in your blood.
Absolutely. I would like to mention one other cohort. I don't think he was ever on radio with us, but he meant a lot to me. He's no longer with us. Chip Moody.
Chip Moody, yes,
You
he
remember
he
him.
did the weekend local news.
Oh, that's right.
When you were the weeknight, you were the main anchor for the local news segment.
Right.
It was done in segments. You were the local news guy. Bill Herring did the national international news. Of course, Doug Brown was the weatherman.
Weather.
And Chuck Williams.
Chuck Williams did the
sports. Did sports. But on weekends,
Chip
there were
came
weekend
in.
people. And Chip did the, I remember. Yes, and of course he left and had a wonderful, amazing career in Dallas.
But of course, he went by way of El Paso.
Right.
And then I think back to Dallas. And
Did he work in Houston too? I can't remember. now.
I seemed like he did.
Because
Yeah.
KHOU and WFAA were kind of, part of
Right.
that whole BELO thing. So if it was BELO
everywhere
at the
he
time.
went, he made such an impact.
Yeah.
And he
Great guy.
succumbed to cancer at a much too early age.
At a very early age. There were some just amazing people. Of course, Doug Brown, one of my favorite people in the world. Doug. Well, we could go on.
We
and
could-
on.
we
We
could.
could go on and on, but I like to end these little interviews with a sort of a questionnaire, the same way that the late James Lipton would for Inside the Actor's Studio. So I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'll start with Rick. What is your favorite word? Your favorite word?
Grace.
Grace. Oh, I like that.
Good.
We all need it. Yeah? Do you have
Same
one?
question?
Yeah. Do you have a favorite word?
Well, I'm going to follow suit with that.
Okay.
Prayer.
Yeah. Okay.
I like prayer, and I believe in prayer.
Yeah. Good. Good. Your least favorite word? And if it's naughty,
One of
don't
those-
say.
One of those seven you can't say.
One of those seven. The seven you can't say on the. Okay. That's me too. I'm kind of there with you.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
That's more
Right.
than one word.
Right, but yeah, I get that. Okay, what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Rick?
He's going to defer to you.
Turns
That's a hard question.
I know that's a hard
It is.
one.
What, you should have given us this earlier. In one word or just?
Oh, no, just
Yeah.
For me, it's this. I came to me
creatively. I would say
talking to
the
folks like you and
new
hearing your
technology and
stories.
stuff. I really,
Yeah.
I really like all that.
Yeah.
Oh, talk about the changes we've seen in technology and
Absolutely.
radio and
Yeah.
television, both. We used to have the scripts in TV were done on 6. There would be 6 of them, and the machine would type type it out, and we'd have to separate all 6 copies of the scripts, and the director would get one, and the anchor would have one, and oh yeah,
I remember.
You remember that?
Yes, indeed.
That's amazing.
Oh,
And they would feed it through a thing that would be the teleprompter, and that's what the prompter would.
So many years.
That was a long time
worked,
ago.
Bill and the sportsman, Chuck, without a teleprompter.
Right.
We
you were just
looked up,
you were just
looked
reading
down.
just reading your script.
Yeah, just read.
Yeah,
we
of course,
tried to have good eye contact.
Yeah, radio's the same way though. I mean, remember the grease pencil and the splicing, a little X-Acto knife, and you splice
young people coming out and getting into radio now have no idea what splicing tape is.
Or even what a card is.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Or a bulk eraser, or those. Anyway, okay. So, what turns you off creatively, or emotionally, or
cell phones?
There you go. That's a good one.
I've back in my day, a phone booth was my cell phone.
Right.
Yeah, I would have to go along with that one.
Yeah. Just think, kids nowadays never know the thrill of finding a quarter in the coin return.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's right.
It doesn't seem like it wasn't that long ago. We didn't have cell phones.
That's right. It wasn't that long.
Really wasn't that long ago.
Small computers now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What is your favorite sound, since we're talking about hearing?
Hearing, sound. My favorite sound. Rick?
Brenda, I can read lips.
Music.
Brenda says my voice.
Music.
I miss music.
Yeah.
Because it all.
Sure.
I don't hear music like everyone else anymore. I hear it in my mind.
Right.
And if it's an unusual, non-familiar song, I can't
It has no
understand
meaning.
it.
Yeah.
Has to be an old favorite.
Yeah. Yep. Old favorites are good. What about you? If you have a favorite sound?
I just music in general.
Yeah.
I like all of it. Yeah. Every genre.
You sing?
I try not to, but yes, in the shower.
Yeah, that's good. Well, what is your least favorite sound?
Least favorite sound? The alarm clock.
Okay. Yep.
Crying.
Yeah. Yep. What other profession would you have wanted to do?
I was thinking about that earlier and wanting to say, and I didn't know how to bring it in. It's difficult to say that I wouldn't change things, but I think I wouldn't change things. I think everything happened for a purpose, a reason.
Yeah.
And I think God intended for me to be in broadcasting, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I could echo everything you're saying. What about you?
When I was in the second grade, my school took a field trip to a radio station, KSCL in Lubbock.
There you go.
And I saw that, and I said, that's what I want to do.
Really?
And so I'm happy with how it turned out.
You've got a great voice, Rick.
So do you.
And so do you, Ann.
Well, what do you know you would not want to do professionally? Is there a job you're like, I would not want that one?
Yeah. Anything else other than radio, TV, I think, or podcast. Anything physical. I'm not too physical.
Yeah, there are people that work really hard out there.
I wouldn't mind being a cook.
Oh, okay.
I love to cook, as Brenda can attest.
See, but food service is one thing. I never worked as a waitress, and I never had a desire to. So I think those folks are, my hat's off to them. What about you, Rick?
I wouldn't want to be president.
That's for sure.
Especially not nowadays.
Not nowadays.
No.
Okay, finally, what do you want to hear the Lord say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done.
I didn't expect to see you here.
I don't believe that.
That's a joke.
I know it's a joke.
I hope he doesn't have to say that.
No, at some point there'll be the last rites again.
Right.
At some point.
Well, and I've been waiting for you, Ron.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I am just so delighted that we had a chance to be here and visit like this, and hope you all enjoyed us as we did take that nice leisurely stroll down memory lane. Treasured friends of mine, though, Rick May, Ron Hall, it's good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Thank you for having us.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.